Yeah. On the one on the island. Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Not a very nice morning, I'm afraid. And welcome to this meeting of the Social Work and Social Care Board, which has been conducted from the Council Chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. So sorry, good morning those online too, not just in the Chamber. In the relation to declaration of interest, members must leave the Chamber or end the call remotely. The meeting has been recorded and will be available on the CORL's website following the meeting. Emma McSween is joining us remotely, and Malcolm Burr will be available from 11:30 onwards. I think Emma's stuck in Renee's and Simpsons in a car. I'm sure we'll be able to hear Emma anyway. Okay. So first thing on the minutes is the minutes of the meeting 2nd December 2022, and that's for approval. Just a second. Sorry.
Chair, just to point out, Councillor Morrison appears as present and as a member in attendance, so we will amend the minutes to correct that.
It's possible it might have been Angus McCormack. I'm not sure. If something tells me he might have been there, but we can see it. We'll see. Okay, so the minutes of the meeting are the 2nd December 2022 for approval. Do we have approval of the minutes? Those who are present? Yep. Declaration of interest. You're invited to declare an interest in any agenda item at this point. If you become aware of an interest during the meeting, then I would ask that you declare it at that time. Anyone? Okay, that's fine. Corporate matters, item number 3, outcome delivery report. Report by Chief Officer, Partnership Services and Community Care. This report details the half-year progress of the 2024-25 departmental strategic priorities for the Health and Social Care Directorate. An update on department key areas of strategic risk is included, as well as progress on the strategic outcomes and the resources identified to implement the business plan. Emma McSween is online and will speak to the report and answer members' questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back over, section 6.2 gives you a feel for the risks, and they've been consistent since the last reporting period, with the exception obviously of the National Care Service. We'll need to review that, and there's a concurrent report in the agenda covering the latest position. Section 7 gives members a feel for the positive developments that we've managed to achieve in the period around digital and data management. Sorry, can you hear that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Our good reports, the scrutiny activity around care at home, and how despite challenges within services, we're progressing with workforce planning, with revised deployment of staffing schedules around adult services, giving more resilience and capacity for service users' attendance. Areas where we're having to put in additional resources around Seaforth House are progressing, meeting the scrutiny requirements of the Care Inspectorate. We're currently live with the Adult Support and Protection Inspection. They're doing the file reads associated with that today and tomorrow. So in the next reporting period, we'll be able to update you, and I'll take a report if required to various committees in the contravening period. And in terms of HC1, I think you've all been well briefed in that situation, their announcement for closure. That's a live issue that we're dealing with, as you would expect. And we're working with HC1 on the contractual HR and service user resident requirements to enable a transition to a local placement, if at all possible. So that's what we're working through at the moment. And you, as a committee, you'll be aware that our plans are to use Bremner Court to expand the capacity within it to provide more local placements. I think, Chair, if unless there's I've missed anything, I'm happy to move to questions from the committee members.
Okay, that's fine. Is there questions for Emma?
Hello, Emma, and good morning.
Morning.
I
Oh,
hope
sorry.
I hope you're not too cold in sunny Sneggy. How are things going in the transition from Larbuya to Taishiport? Thank you, Chair.
So the stage we're at, there's still contractual matters to do with their announcement to closure that we're taking legal advice and communicating with them on. In terms of, we need to accept their wish to close as part of our contract arrangements. So we're working through that with them. In the background, we have HR colleagues working with their HR colleagues on the potential 2P arrangements and what that would look like. And we have social work colleagues and the provider service at Bremner Court liaising with family and residents to help them with their planning and to ensure that their views are expressed as we seek to find an alternative placement for them. The date of transition is still to be agreed, George, so I can't comment on that at the moment. But we've been clear with HC1 that we expect it to be at a date that will enable a planned, safe transition for the residents and the workforce. So we would rather that was not, the original date could have been in December. We couldn't apply that date with such notice. So we're aiming for into the new year at a date still to be agreed with HC1.
Leva, thank you. I'm just really concerned about the people. You know, I think they have to be really cared for, and not that I would suggest otherwise, but that them and their families are really kept fully in the picture, if you know what I mean.
Thank you,
And
George.
that's what, sorry, Chair, I'm talking over you there.
Carry on, Emma. Sorry.
That's at the heart of our planning from the outset. We know what it takes to do a safe transition with our own workforce to our own service, and the planning and the time that's needed to. We had a really successful transition to Seaforth House in terms of residents' welfare, etc., and family feeling involved. We know what we have to do to get that done so well. So that's the learning that we're applying for the HC1 situation, and we'll be holding the line on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Callum McLean, Councillor Callum, thanks.
Yeah,
I thought I had.
yeah, Chair. I had the same question. I was just wondering if there was a timeline. So I think George Murray beat me to it. So I was just looking for a timeline.
Okay. Angus, Councillor Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really on section 6.1 and the risk management, particularly risk SR6. Fail to ensure that appropriate social care services are available for the people of the Outer Hebrides. It is a serious concern, basically, this risk, because we're moving Larbuya into one of our own establishments. There are rumours from the community about the other two private homes in the Western Isle, and well, in Lewis and Harris particularly. And I'm not sure we're going to have capacity. Now, I know we're not going to have capacity for everyone. And given that we're an ageing population, is there any plan for the future, Emma?
Thank you. Happy to answer that, Chair.
Yeah.
There will be capacity with Bremner Court to afford people local placements and holding voids in other care homes. So unless people choose to go off Eilean, we will be able to offer them a local placement. But that means, Angus, as you're pointing out, we're still 38 placements down overall when Larbuya closes. So that pressure on the system is challenging. Going forward, we're having discussions with Scottish Government on the immediate challenges with the HC1 position, but with our ongoing challenges with the capacity of care homes and nursing homes locally. So there's live discussions with them, Angus, because to do anything different and to expand what we have will require additional resources. And given the limitations of our revenue and capital, we're making that case to Scottish Government. So yes, there are plans being progressed.
Okay, Angus. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. If I could just come back on the care situation. It's not a lot of beds that we are going to have available, given that we are an ageing population. And looking at, well, I think it's common knowledge that the accounts of one of the private homes is showing them running at a considerable loss at the moment, which is another concern. I'm not sure we would have capacity if anything was to happen, you know, and then the whole idea of the new care unit was to facilitate as much of this as we possibly could, to close the existing 2 care homes we had and leave capacity. But the capacity is now stretched so narrow and so little that I think we could end up with people without a care facility when they require it. And I think it is a challenge for us. And I would hope the government would come in and support us. I think we should be looking maybe at another investment if we can, building another home somewhere. I know the current capital budget and current budgets are squeezed that much that we're having difficulty to get there. But I think we need to realise we are in quite a serious situation. And I think as the year go on, it's going to get worse. The other point I was going to make too, just for the committee, was further down. There's a report coming to the ordinance scrutiny on the medication issue at the new care home. So I think I saw that further down in the report. So there's a comprehensive report at ordinance scrutiny on Wednesday about that.
Thank you, Angus. Councillor Mackenzie, is it? Sorry, was it?
Thank you. Well, I think George and Angus actually and Tom covered a lot of what I was going to say, but I'm not quite clear with the transfer of the people from Blackbury and staff. What capacity do we have left? I didn't quite catch what will the position be, and is there enough staff? Obviously, there's enough staff in Blackbury at the moment. And are they, as far as you know, are they going to transfer? Emma, sorry.
Emma?
Thank you, Chair. This is, as you can imagine, this is a sensitive subject, and there's contractual matters that I mentioned earlier in my preamble to the report. What we're working through with HC1 is the transition of all available staffing is our take. We would want to take all the staff. Now, the negotiations around that have still to be concluded. But what we're saying is, with our recruitment challenges and to create the full model of care available at Bremner Court, we want to take all staff. So there, you know, in terms of risk to the employees, in my view, it's very low, because we're making a commitment ahead of all the formal contractual arrangements being agreed that we want to transition this all the staff to support all the residents locally in a placement. The placements aren't the same. It's not a nursing home. So we're working through the staffing schedules that will be required around Bremner Court to support them safely in that setting. It's not a transfer of like for like, if you see what I mean. So the questions you ask are all things that we're looking at and will be concluded before the final transition plan and dates agreed.
Thank you.
Noddy?
Yeah.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. I'm not a member of your committee. And thanks, Emma, for the report. I know there's a lot of work going on. I was up at Seaforth House last Friday. Fantastic facility. I'm also aware that amalgamating staff from different care homes under the one roof is going to have its own teething problems as well. Now, with Blackbury coming from outside the Comhairle coming in, you know, that's going to be a managing situation which management will be looking at as well. There's also probably a different price structure for folk coming from Blackbury going into a Comhairle care home. I dare say, in terms of cost per week per resident, which is probably going to have to be spoken to the families of those concerned. These are things that Emma and her team will be ironing out. Can I ask, we're talking about a capital investment. Is the building where Barbuya is that been earmarked by the company that own it for any future use? Are they looking to sell it? Can we have an update on exactly what the proposals are for that particular building?
Emma, do you want to come in?
Chair, I can't comment on HC1's view on what they will do with the legacy property at the end of this process. We've ruled it out of our options for all the right reasons and based on good evidence. So whether there would be any interest in the property or how they wish to use it, I'm not actually aware of what they've done with other properties. But it's really a matter for HC1. I have fielded an inquiry on that matter and put it directly to the commercial operations director, if there's anyone who wishes to know any specifics, I can provide that contact, because that's not really a matter for us to get in the middle of.
Okay, Norrie, you want to come back in or?
Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. Are we pretty confident that we've got the bed space under the Comhairle's own auspices to manage the population that we have just now?
Straight answer to that is no, because we built Bremner Court to give us additional capacity, and what we're doing is using it to absorb 13 nursing home placements that are going out in the system. Bremner Court and Seaforth House were built on the understanding that everything else stayed the same. So that's why we're having these discussions with Scottish Government about expansion capacity. And when we built the new facilities, there are expansion capacity at both the care home and the extra care housing side. And as members who have been around long enough, they'll remember that Lewis Residential Care commenced with a look at the whole of Lewis and different sites across Lewis. So if we have to revisit the information, we did some options appraisal at different sites with different partners, we'll bring that into the fore. The challenge is the capital resourcing and then the workforce for any expansion capacity, being able to do both. But that it's live. We're dealing, as you can imagine, with the immediate risk, ensuring that there's safe transition for the residents, which we have capacity to do in a different care model for some. And then it's future-proofing ourselves yet again on the back of the HC1 decision to see how we can expand local capacity for our ageing population.
Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. I'm sure you guys will rise to the challenge and keep us informed. Thanks.
Councillor McNeill online.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Emma. Could you give me an update on the care home situation in Barra with St Brendan's? As we all know, there's a bit of an ongoing saga and we don't seem to be making much progress, unfortunately, as far as I know.
Over to you, Emma.
Chair, I'm not sure how to comment on this because in terms of progress, we've addressed, following any incident, there's a process you follow. We've addressed all requirements regarding that. So if I'm not sure, are you meaning the build, Tam? I'm just
It's the building that I'm referring to, the general state of the building. No, I'm not referring to what you're referring to. No.
Yes, I can answer that. So we've got our asset teams engaging with NHS asset teams and what we have, the best information we have on the property and what works need to be done. And as you would expect, all statutory requirements will be met. That's non-negotiable to ensure the building as is. The future of St Brendan's and the hub, I think you've had a recent Policy and Resources Committee report on that. And from a social care perspective, housing with extra care was the intention, it still is. How the phasing of the campus plan will play out is dependent on a number of factors. And if members are minded, I can speak to Dan McPhail about getting an update report on that and circulated through you as chair, just so that you're clear on where we are from a social care perspective.
Are you happy yourself with the current situation with St Brendan's? At the moment and going forward,
Well, happy. Is Emma McSween ever happy?
Yeah.
In seriousness, though, it's an aged building. We will ensure that the statutory compliance is met. But in terms of the layout, it's not the layout of a care home standard that we would be building today. It's not the housing with extra care model that we've been wanting for a number of years to develop, that we've analysed would bring a number of benefits to the residents at the moment and future residents. So we need to keep progressing plans, one, to maintain the building we have, while hopefully the social care housing model progresses. It's just the time frames around that, Councillor McNeill, I can't give you at the moment because there's so many variables at play.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but I find it very hard to listen to when we're looking at other members are discussing about building another care home when St Brendan seems to be it's kind of forgotten, you know, and we haven't progressed much in the last term. It's just
So for your reassurance, from a health and social care department perspective, St Brendan's is very much live for us, and we're striking the balance between doing anything we need to keep the future build progress live and our information up to date as required for these, for further consideration of whatever decisions need to be taken. But also, I think, for your assurance that the existing residents and the existing services that were cited on any works that need to be done to keep the building operational and safe and as pleasant an environment as we can, given the limitations of the design.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McNeill. Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, just following on from the discussions that other councillors have had, it's clear that significant risk, in particularly up in the Lewis side at the moment and Harris, with an ageing population. And as Councillor MacDonald alluded to, you're talking about in excess of £500–600 a week extra for those that were in Plartbwye to what will be charged, in the new facility. And that is significant. And in addition to that, Councillor Morrison made reference to one of the private homes having significant financial problems in going forward. In addition to that, there's the national insurance contribution that's coming. We're told that the local authority may be, the government will accommodate the local authority staff, but then you've got the nursing homes, the private nursing homes, that will have that added cost, which they'll have to add on to the weekly cost. So that's going to be an additional cost that's ahead of us. I don't know whether this has been discussed at the IJB last week or not, but it's clear what's going to happen with lack of beds is both bed blocking and delayed discharge from hospitals. And that'll become an increasing problem, with lack of capacity, because as Emma said, we're looking at the 38 beds that could be accommodated extra and would reduce the number that were bed blocking or with delayed discharge in hospitals. So I can see a significant problem ahead of us that won't go away until an options appraisal is looked at very carefully, and it will need capital investment from the Scottish Government or whoever in going forward to address what will be a problem. It won't go away with an ageing population.
Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. I fully endorse what's already been said here, and we're at, I would say, we're at crisis point as regards bed capacity. I think that's the discussion we've got here, and I go along with what Councillor Morrison says, is that some form of capital investment must be looked at, and that's why I would go for that we should go from this board here. We should recommend, as Councillor beside me said, an options appraisal. Should we request an options appraisal from this committee to see what can be done, because we are at a crisis point? I don't know if the rest of the councillors would agree on that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. What does the rest of the committee think? Emma?
Thank you, Chair. We're already doing that with information we have available, and we're sharing information with Scottish Government on what expansion capacity would look like. I think to commission an options appraisal at the moment would be a matter for the Integration Joint Board, but what we can note is feedback from this Social Work Social Care Board to that, because the strategic planning for health and social care decisions sits with the IJB. But I can bring a report to both, if you like, Chair, saying where we are with discussions with Scottish Government, what information we've got available to share from previous options appraisal. Because if you're talking about doing a fresh options appraisal and design development work, you'll have to commit the resources to do that from a budget. So, you know, it's spend required to do that. So what we're doing at the moment with Scottish Government is reusing information we already had produced and indicative costings based on GIFA and inflationary rates, etc. So that information, as best as we have it, is being used with Scottish Government at the moment. I think for your reassurance, we're not blind as officers and as senior leaders in the system to the immediate and the long-term risks to our health and social care system on the back of HC1's decision, but also on the back for all commission services. It's not just residential and nursing care. My understanding that the national insurance aspects can impact, and that's for the next financial year. So we're live to all these discussions, and through COSLA and others will be ensuring that feedback is provided robustly in terms of the implications, because we commission internal and external services, and there's a difference, as I understand it, to how national insurance costs will be attributed.
Thanks, Emma. George. Okay. George. Councillor Murray, George Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reiterate what Councillor McNeill said. I'm sure that he feels a wee bit like Barra is at the back end of considerations, and I would really like to see something coming forward in Barra. That's the first point. Second point, I think that we are at almost capacity now in Taishiport, especially with the La Buya closing, and we really have to be looking at something going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Councillor McNeill.
Thank you again, Chair. I'm coming back in on this one again from a slightly different angle. My understanding that care home costs throughout the islands are the same in every home, no matter where you are. Now, we've all had the discussion as regards to costs and whatever. However, the services provided in every care home is not equal. So St Brendan's, for example, is not en suite, and it's shared bathrooms and shared toilets and whatever. So, you know, we really need to be looking at equity of service across. If we can't get the service up to the same, I think we should be looking at what people are expected to pay from being in a brand new building with your own room and your own suite to a very outdated building with shared facilities and whatever. So I know that's the aim, but the aim is a long way off yet, and I think we really need to look at the things being balanced out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McNeill. Maybe not an accurate statement yet there that not all care homes are the same price per week. There's definitely, it varies between private and council. Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Can I come back to that one, Chair? I should have said with the council, the council care homes, I believe They're all the same price. There is no private care option in Barra or Uist, and it's a similar situation with Trianach that's also an outdated building that needs looked at as well. So
Emma, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, it's just to explain that the revenue charging does not include any capital element of investment. It's based on the revenue costs of operating all the homes and divided per bed, and you've got disproportionate costs depending on the size and scale. So you've got economies of scale in some larger services and some more challenges with the per head cost in smaller services. So it's not a straightforward exercise, and what we don't do is reflect any capital investment or disinvestment or lack of investment in the revenue charging to date.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you,
Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a point that occurred to me just now. I read a press release about 10 days ago that the other HC1 establishments closing on the mainland, that Highland Council were hopeful of getting some funding, and so were NHS Highland to support that closure. I would hope that we would get something similar if that was the case, that we wouldn't be left out in a limb. And the other point that just occurred to me was that given that some of the patients, or I shouldn't say patients, but some of the residents in Blairbuoy are nursing care support, would the health board here not be willing to assist in some way to accommodate and to assist, particularly the nursing side of things?
Emma?
So there's been quite a bit of discussion in the press about the other HC1 home, and we've been cited on the facts of the situation. They differ to some of the information in the press, but we're also negotiating with Scottish Government, as I said earlier, on any potential capital. So that discussion is live, Councillor Morrison, and we'll ensure that we're not forgotten about if there is any additional capital to be made available for any partnership that has a home closure to manage. Your second question, Angus, sorry, what was that? There was a bit about the Scottish.
Yes, sorry, I've just been put on just now. It was to do with the health side of things, given that there are nursing residents in Blairbuoy. Would the health board here be willing to assist or able to assist in any way?
So in terms of the care of the residents, we will be planning that as a partnership, and that includes health services to ensure that when they transition, they'll be well supported. The Blairbuoy nursing staff, the plan is they will transfer across to the new service as well and continue to care for the residents. So really, as a health and social care partnership, we've got that matter covered in our planning already.
Thank you, Emma.
Sorry to come back in.
It's all right. Councillor MacDonald.
I'm not a member of your committee. I'm just wondering, Emma, between yourself and maybe the Chief Executive, do you think this strengthens the case for a single island authority going forward, given that the moves are already afoot to bring social care under the auspices of Edinburgh? I would like to think that a grown-up approach to social care within the islands, with the Health Board and the Comhairle working together to provide the best care possible for its residents, would involve possibly, or it would indeed strengthen the case for a single island authority. I don't know what your views are on that. I don't know what you care to make them public here, but I think it definitely strengthens the case.
I think from my perspective, the pausing of the National Care Service is the most critical thing at the moment to understand what does that mean, what in effect will be done in terms of a national care service or a national care board, and how can that play out for local partnerships, and what influence will we have on whatever happens on the back of the national care service developments. It's not going to be as originally intended, we know that now, but what could it be? And just for your assurance, as senior leaders in the system, regardless of the structure that's in place, we will always endeavour to work well with all partners to ensure that the services we deliver at the front line are the priority in any discussions.
Thank you. All right. Okay, is there anyone else? Any more questions for Emma? No, sorry. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, could I just get a clarification on national insurance? Is there any help from Scottish government or from UK government to care homes for the national insurance contributions that's coming down line? Private ones, I mean. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks for that.
Emma?
We haven't received any guidance on that, Councillor McLean. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen next, because it's not just care homes. It's any commission services that isn't exempt. So that, you know, there's a fundamental issue to be addressed there, and are the IGBs or the local authorities going to be given an uplift to pass that on, as we were for, you know, living wage settlements? We don't know. Is there going to be further discussion on what's applied and what's exempt? Not aware of anything, or I had a briefing on that yet, but they're live issues that we're following up, as will the independent sector as well, through Scottish Care, which is the umbrella body for organisations such as the local providers. And they've got a very strong voice in Donald McCaskill, who I'm sure will be leading their discussions on that nationally.
Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. Just speaking to the private national care homes, they are really concerned about this new national insurance contributions, and really concerned. It probably will mean either them carrying on in some cases or closing. It's as frank as that.
Councillor McInnes?
Just following on from that, it's clear that this is where, you know, island proofing needs to be have a look at in particular, and the Scottish Affairs Committee will be up and will be meeting a call on 10th of December, so I'm sure this is one of the topics that will be discussed with them. But clearly, you know, island proofing and the additional costs that are involved in services in island communities should be addressed, and an islands community impact assessment should be done on any changes in legislation, both in Scotland and at UK level. So that should be done and should be considered as part of the overall budget. That's my opinion anyway.
That does. Any more? Anyone else? Okay, do members agree to note the report? Agreed. National Care Service, the next item. Now, I would propose that we take this item at the end of the meeting. We're waiting for our Chief Executive, who's at another meeting. He's due to come anytime. So we'll just move on to item 5, Chief Social Work Officer Report, 2023-24. This report is for noting and is in relation to the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer on the statutory work undertaken during the period 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024, which is amended to the report and sets out the detail of social work and social care activities during the reporting period. The report is a means of reporting on the delivery of social work services for the local authority areas, highlighting key activities, developments and challenges. Jack Libby will answer members' questions. Jack? Yeah.
Okay, right. Good morning, members, and thank you, Chair, for the introduction. Firstly, can I apologise for some of the repetition in this current report, but the sad reality is the landscape continues to be marked by many of the factors that have, I suppose, been contained within previous reports, these being significant workforce pressures, ageing population, increased demand, rising complexity of needs, social care cost escalation, workforce shortages, evolving legislation, pandemic effects and the cost of living crisis, all disproportionately impacting the most disadvantaged in communities, including our own communities. Within the body of this report, Social Work Scotland setting the bar report is referenced. The report indicates sustained problems around recruitment and retention across all areas in the sector, with mixed success in addressing them. Ms McSween is present today to assist with answering any questions members may have in relation to adult services alongside myself. Any questions relating to children's services should be asked at the Education, Sport and Children's Services Committee tomorrow. So, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do appreciate it's a comprehensive report. There's a lot in it, Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libby. Is there any question? Councillor Morrison?
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank Mr. Libby for this report. I found this quite enlightening, really, of the way the service are working in our island. There are a few concerns, like Mr. Libby himself has highlighted. I mean, reading through the report, there are quite a few pressure points. I mean, the biggest one I can see here is the lack of social workers that we have, and it's been alluded to in the report, where departments have been asked to find 5% cost savings. You know, we've taken quite a bit of social work already, and I think we need to be very careful when we're going forward here, because I think the service is actually stretched to the limits, reading through what I can gather. It's good. It's encouraging to see that the department is working and functioning, but they are stretched. And I've seen that myself, having dialogue with some members of staff recently with various issues in my own ward. There are quite a few, you know, offence referrals that they're up slightly, although they're static in various things, which puts pressure on other areas of the department. And I think we need to be careful here when we do come to finding savings within this department, because they are truly stretched. Perhaps Mr. Libby would be able to put more light on that, on the social work issue and the aspect of it.
Thank you. I'm sure members have noticed that there's a thread running through the report, that being a supply-demand thread. The reality is it's complex to protect the public. We have vulnerable children and we have vulnerable adults within our communities. Not only is the quantum important, you need the right number of staff, but you also need the right training for the staff that you do have. And that takes investment, and it's a significant time investment to train up your staff. And when the reality is our workforce, particularly our social work workforce, who are involved in assessing risk and need, the numbers have declined over many years. I think it's truly remarkable that the service has managed to keep its head above water this long. And I am concerned that there is no room for further reduction in the service. In fact, I feel strongly that this is a service that should both be protected from disinvestment and considered for further investment. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Libby. Noddy?
Yeah, I'm not a member of your committee. I'm aware that there are huge difficulties surrounding social work at the moment. And with regard to the whole budget, we're looking at 5% minimum across a huge area of our own resources. So it's going to impact everywhere with some degree of significance. I was going to speak to Jack a while ago. I got a feedback from the local pub board scheme regarding some behaviour within the town that didn't quite meet the minimum criminal threshold, and it was referred back to the pub board scheme that we would have to go to the Comhairle to speak to the Comhairle about an antisocial behaviour order. Apparently there are two different kinds of antisocial behaviour orders. So this just shows you the difficulty we're in just now with policing and everything else impacting on social work. And leaving that aside, we mentioned this at the previous meeting, not this particular committee. I think it probably was PNR or Audit and Scrutiny, about the unintended consequences of cuts, particularly with regard to social work. You know, the things that we cannot predict might happen because we might cut a post within social work, and the knock-on effect of that could possibly be that we end up with an additional person in care, which would end up exponentially costing the Comhairle more money. So we need to be careful about the unintended consequences of the cuts we're about to embark on significantly over the next 6 months, 3 months even, when the Scottish Government decides on the budget and we decide on what it is we're going to have to do with the reduced money we've got. So again, I would highlight the unintended consequences possibly of what it is we're looking to cut and where we're looking to cut, particularly with protecting social work and the unintended consequences and the knock-on effect of possibly not supporting social work to the fullest capacity that we can.
Thanks, Noddy. Do you want to come in there? And then Jack?
Thanks. I think there have been recurring conversations within this chamber over recurring years in terms of workforce challenges, both in social care and social work. And my own professional opinion is that if we do not do something different now, these same conversations will take place in years ahead. I do think we're at a critical point. I'm trying to separate out here. We've a very healthy discussion earlier in this meeting around the pressures on social care workforce, be it care at home or in a residential facilities. And rightly, these issues are discussed with some regularity. We need to focus as well, I feel, on the small number of staff, qualified social workers, who are responsible for making these assessments that, to a large extent, determine whether it's safe for someone to remain in their home or to remain in the home of their parents. These are difficult decisions. They're time and skill intensive. The reality is we do not have the number of qualified social workers we need. We need to be thankful that, particularly within children's services, that we have very low staff absence rates. It hasn't been that way always, but the last number of years, it's been. I'm very impressed with the attendance rates of the staff, given the challenge of the job, and we've had very little staff turnover. That could change tomorrow, and there is no resilience in the service today, unlike maybe back in the day. So that's how fragile the service is. When I say it's remarkable that we're keeping our head above water, it is remarkable, and it's testament to the efforts that the workforce are making. I think if the staff numbers fall any further due to vacancies or staff sickness, I really am worried that that head will no longer be above water. That's how critical the situation is at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah. Malcolm coming in, then Gordon Murray online. Malcolm.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's important to note the positive picture here with social work staffing. Our numbers are low, as the workforce table shows. We have fewer team leaders, we have fewer social workers per head than the other island authorities. What I would point out, though, is the success of the Comhairle's policies of retaining our own staff. Orkney may have, for example, 9 social workers. I suspect 8 of these are agency workers brought in from elsewhere, and it is equally the value of having locally based and locally trained and locally resident employees can even out some of these numbers. So I would want to commend the service and the Comhairle generally in that regard. And as members of Human Resources Subcommittee know, last week we moved some funding around to enable one of the trainee social workers to be retained. Again, a local person. Strictly speaking, there is no budget for that post, but again, some miracles were worked to enable that to happen. I empathise very much with the situation which Mr. Libby indicates. The position for social work across Scotland, I think, is not getting any better, and we can all speculate about whether government and others could have done more to support the profession. I think that's part of the National Care Service Act that I'll come to, the bill rather, is about supporting the profession, and I'll refer to that in my own report. But we're doing well, but as Mr. Libby says, there is no resilience. That is the issue. And I think that is the work of all services. It's the work of the social work service, particularly because if we become reliant on agency staff, there will be financial problems and there will ultimately be discouragement for local recruitment as well. So it's a balance I think that Mr. Libby and colleagues are balancing very well, but it is very fragile. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Gordon Murray online.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning. I'm not a member of your committee. I would like to thank the Chief Social Work Officer for the report. It is really concerning regarding what I've read in the report, especially about the staffing and the fact that his department's going to face more cuts. And I think this is a problem we have when the Comhairle embarks on a salami slicing budget strategy, which takes a blanket 5% cut along departments, especially departments that are really to the bone. And I think this has to stop. We need to prioritise what's important, because some of these cuts are going to have real dire consequences for families that are in the most difficult of situations. It really is terrible. And it's all about the budget. We've got to ensure that we prioritise. I was going to ask about a number of things. I know that there have been council decisions on respite reviews and transport reviews. I was wondering, was there an update on that? Because that hasn't come to the council as of yet. And the progress on the antisocial behaviour strategy. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Jack?
About social behaviour, transport, and I missed first point. Councillor Murray made.
What was your first point, Gordon? You're gone.
It may come back to me, Chair.
Aye.
So, okay, if I carry on? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
carry on.
I'd like to thank the Chief Executive for his comments and observations. And I should have added something about culture. You know, there is, despite the adversity at times, there's a very positive culture within the service, you know, and the people do go the extra mile. I'd like to thank our HR colleagues as well, because the reality is, and finance colleagues, because the reality is there are multiple small pots of money from the Scottish Government with different priorities, and we've been, I think, very creative in how we've utilised these different pots of money by pulling them together to create something that the whole is better than the sum of the parts. And it's often, I've heard it, it's like playing a game of chess where we're constantly having to move pieces around the board to play our best game. And I would say that's what we're doing at the moment. We're playing our best game with the pieces that are left on the board. So thank you for these comments. In terms of Councillor Murray's questions, in terms of the antisocial behaviour work plan, that's completed in its draft form, and the next stage of that will be for further consultation, both the partner agencies and the wider public, hopefully through community groups. But it was completed in draft form last week, and it will be ready for circulation. I've got no update in terms of the transport policy, but I'll speak to Mrs. McSween afterwards in relation to that. And was it respite, Mr. Murray? I think Councillor Murray referenced respite there. So I suppose the reality is with the respite and short break budget, demand is either supply is either just meeting demand, or demand is just exceeding supply. It's there or thereabouts on any given day. There is no resilience, you know, again in that budget. if demand does increase, then and if there is no additional funding, then we will have to review packages of care. You know, we provide packages of care strictly based on the eligibility criteria, which is substantial and critical need at the moment. So again, it's another service where heads above water, but on the margins. So, and you don't know what's the reality, Chair, in terms of social work and social care. And I suppose the last week and this weekend, which has been particularly busy, has evidence you don't know what's coming through the door tomorrow. That's the reality. You just don't know what's coming through the door tomorrow. And if you're lucky, nothing will come through the door tomorrow. And if you're unlucky, something will. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you. Councillor McNeill online.
Thank you again, Chair. Thank you, Jack, for the report and whatever. I really do sympathise with you, and you know, it's a very difficult situation and you're stretched, but again, I know it's not easy, but accessing full services on Barra across the board is just not happening at the moment. You know, I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do, and it isn't a perfect situation, but you know, we have to be very, very careful what we're doing with our budgets, and we're not cutting any further into the bone on this one. It's something I'm not really comfortable with. So I think if all councillors are aware of situations that are going on, that's not so you will have my support as much as I can anyway, Jack. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Tam. Councillor Leader Paul Steele.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Jack for the report. I think they're doing a great job with limited resources as we stand. You know, it is an area we'd like to invest in if we could, and I suppose I'm heartened by the support from members with through the budget setting process. We're looking at prioritisation, so it's good to get that feedback coming through. Salami slicing is not something we want to do. It's for all members to come to a decision on how we take our budget savings. So the 5% cuts in each department was to give us an indication of what things would look like. And if one thing is done, it's showed that 5% savings in this department would have, you know, quite dire consequences. So I think it was a useful exercise for us to do internally. And I think going forward, you know, like I say, there's going to be similar requests coming from other areas within the college. We've got to weigh things up, and prioritisation is going to be key going forward. But like I say, the message I'm getting today is the support for social work and this department is quite strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Now we have Councillor Murray online, then Ray Mackenzie, and then Colin McLean. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chair, and thanks for the responses and the discussion. And I understand that the 5% was an exercise, but I'd like to ask you, Chair, to make the strongest representations to ensure that this budget is protected, because, as I said, it'll have dire consequences if it's cut anymore. And as alluded to in the Chief Social Work Officer's report. So that's all I'd be asking for, that you make the strongest representations that this budget is protected from the salami slicing. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ray Mackenzie.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, well, we all know what the current situation is, and it is serious in the community. It's a small, vulnerable and critical situation, department, which is vulnerable, but it's vital. And I agree with the point made about the 5% cut. When it's a very small department, you know, a 5% cut in a vulnerable department is, you know, has much greater effect than a larger department, as we know. So yeah, any support that should be given when it comes to budgeting should be given.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor MacLean.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I compliment Mr. Libby on the report. It's an easy read, but it's enlightening, and there's I can see quite a lot of ways that in which you've reorganised the department, and that's the way you're keeping your staff as well, is to be complemented. There's a lot in the I think Mr. Burr alluded to this, the successes in the department are great. I can just think of compulsory supervision orders. It's the lowest number in 20 years, you mentioned. You know, so there's quite a lot of success stories within it. Just a reference to the workforce, and this again bears out what has been said about the 5%. I don't know if I would call it salami slicing, but I would call it slicing in the budget for each department. So in the children and family social work, I see there are, for the Outer Hebrides, 1 team leader, whereas in Shetland have 2, Orkney have 2. And then again, we've got senior social workers, 1 for the Outer Hebrides, 1.6 FTE for Shetland and 1 for Orkney. But then it comes to social workers, 6.6, 12 in Shetland and 9 in Orkney. So you can see where the budgets in these other 2 island authorities are going to. And maybe there is a time, this is the time to look at the budget that we're putting in to social care and Jack Libby's department, because I think really we should look at its, because I think all of us here are agree the work they're doing is hard, it's difficult, every day is different, and we've seen that on the news items as well. Even this week, we're seeing how a lot of his department will be employed in certain things. So I think that really we should be looking at something, because it looks very much, you mentioned, and Mr. Burr has mentioned it as well, there's no resilience, none whatsoever. And therefore I think in such an important work, I look at child and adolescent mental health and well-being, and I see the work that's involved there. I just look through the report. That is, in my opinion, one of the most important things today, mental health, well-being. And I think we need to actually make sure that we put in the finance, because without the finance, we're finished. So I think that we should be helping the department rather than slicing off some of it, and I think maybe that's can come up somewhere. Maybe Mr. Burr has got a magic wand that he can do something with.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Colin. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for these remarks. I mean, I think we all know the difficult position in which we find ourselves, where maintenance of current budgets is actually very, very difficult. I mean, I hear the views, and I share them, that key service budgets are not capable of reduction, and yet we still have to balance the budget. I'll be referring to this at the formal meeting tomorrow evening with the convener's position. I certainly don't. The 5%, as I wish to be clear, is merely indicative. In the absence of a clear political direction saying we need to preserve this at the expense of this, then we have to look at what will balance the budget, and the 5% wouldn't even balance, you know, I doubt would even balance the budget. On the more positive note, we need to see what comes through the Scottish budget announcement on 4th of December. There's a lot of political discussion, as some of you will be aware, between the government and other parties, and a lot of that discussion is around protecting local government services. We have to hope that manifests itself in the commitments in the draft budget. But clearly, local government budgets, it's good to see, are high on the agenda. No decisions have been taken, as you all know. These are merely indicative figures, but there are a number of services in the corridor which cannot be reduced any further. I've been saying that for a very long time, and you've so far accepted that advice that services, and this is one of them, can't be reduced any further. But as to expansion, certainly I cannot give any hopes there, and Mr. Libby knows that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think, Mr. Libby has to be commended on this report, and it clearly shows the challenging position that the department does face. And as Mr. Bauer did say, one of the strengths that we do have is an experienced workforce, and we already see, the success of training our own has been doing. And I think it's an excellent example of, in difficult to fill positions, which social work is, that if we can train our own, you have a stability going forward. If they've been trained in-house, and there's far more likelihood that they will stay in those jobs. And HR was very, very supportive of, that progression. In difficult to fill posts. And we see with care services and care homes how much agency staff is costing. And as Mr. Burr did say, the cost of having those amount of external agency staff in the other islands that aren't domiciled there, you don't have the exact link with social work that need to be really domiciled, I would say, in the area more than any other staff. And building on the success, we did get an excellent presentation in here on the Burns House presentation from how that's been developed over the last 20 years in different areas around at a global level. And it's strengthening, that the bid that was submitted by the call here was successful. And we were led to, with the staff that were here, the building blocks and a strong foundation that is being developed. And that's taking place here in Stornoway. And I was just wondering, Jack, what the development and what timescale we have for that project, which will be of key significance, with those that are facing challenges in the community.
So it's interesting. So the Bairns House is one of these initiatives that I know members and the community welcomes. It's a great step forward in terms of how we go about protecting children in our community. There have been days where I have, in all honesty, regretted submitting that bid in the first place because it is time intensive. And when you've got all these competing demands, I'm saying, is this really what we need to be doing at the moment? It is one, again, the staff have risen to the challenge. The reporting back to Scottish Government on Bairns House it's extensive, but we managed to keep a pace with that thus far. But it is an additional challenge, but it will be worth it in the long run. Where we are in terms of the project is, we are. The works will be going out to tender. My understanding is, if not December 24, then January 25, and we're hoping that the building works will commence in late February or March 25. And I think there's estimating, I don't say that 3 to 4 month period of time from start to completion. So by summer 2025, we should have our Bairns House up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Councillor Colin McLean.
Yeah, I go back to what the Chief Executive was saying today, and I fully agree with what he says, that we need a clear political decision. And to be quite honest with you, it's because we haven't had that. This is in my opinion. It's because we haven't had that, and I hope we discuss it tomorrow's informal. That's why the officers have had to do this 5% slicing here, there, and all departments. We have to come to a decision in the department, within the authority, to say whether, in fact, and I'll be quite honest, are we going to keep on supporting things little by little and really gaining very little, or are we going to say, right then, we need to put our finance into what I would call practical day-to-day living of our individuals, and not into fanciful things maybe within culture and heritage. I'm just putting that out as we have to make these decisions. If we're going to put our money in one side to it and leaving what I would say is one of the most important, whether it's the health and well-being of our citizens, and leave that to be sliced, then I think we're not going to achieve much. And that's what I'm saying. So I hope maybe we'll discuss that tomorrow. I hope I'm sure I sort of got that sort of things, but we need clear political strategy or intervention or whatever, or process, whatever, on what we're going to do, because we haven't had it.
Thank you, Callum. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. I'm not a member of your committee. There was another question I was going to ask about. There was an inspection report relating to the fostering and adoption service, and there's a comment there that says that there was non-adherence with policies and procedures. And I just want to ask the Chief Social Work Officer, is he happy that that has now been addressed? Because we know the problems caused if we go out with policies and procedures. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So happy isn't a word that slips off my tongue terribly often or very easily. What I would say is, so this is what social workers have to do, I suppose. They have to assess, do, and then record, explain. Now, the bit I am content with, I am confident about, is that the right decisions have been made. Where we can be challenged at times because of the quantum of the resource we have is, it can be difficult, I suppose, to always keep our policy and procedures up to date. And it can be difficult to always keep our recording up to date in terms of reflecting the decisions that we've taken. So, and I think that is my answer. I am confident that we are making sound, safe decisions for vulnerable children who are in foster, adoptive or kinship placements. But admittedly, it is a challenge to update. It's a shifting landscape. It's a constantly shifting policy landscape. That's the reality. The expectations on services are greater than ever in terms of how you represent your services through policy and procedure. So that's where the challenge is there. And, you know, again, as I say, explaining our actions to a standard. But I do not lose sleep at night. You know, I will never lose, if a policy isn't, well, how can I explain this? As long as people are making the right decisions, as long as children are thriving in placements, and the inspection of fostering recognised that children are doing well in their placements, as long as that is happening, then I will have peace of mind in that respect. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for letting me be back in, but it really supports that point. At a time of constrained resources, matters have to be prioritised. Policy reviews are important. Policies are extremely important. No council you can't know where you are as members, and we can't know where we are as officials if the policy regime isn't there. But at a time of constraint, I'll refer to the comments at a recent meeting I was at, attended by the Chief Social Work Advisor to Scottish Government, where she said social workers are not there to have perfect case notes, they're there to effect positive change in the lives of children. And while that doesn't mean you dispense with other things, I am confident, as Mr. Libby is confident, that the key decisions are being taken, and those are the ones that matter to individuals. And the policy reviews, they might be late, but they are not forgotten. And I think that is a point which that particular inspection, and I thank members for their understanding of it, was somewhat unrealistic about, but that's a personal view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Is there any more questions before we move on? No. Okay. So, do you agree to note the report? Do members agree? Agreed. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Thank you very much. Now, back to number 4, National Care Service, Scotland Bill. This report provides an update on the status of the National Care Service Bill and associated developments. On 14th November 2024, the Minister for Social Care, Wellbeing and Sport announced a pause of the Stage 2 process of the National Care Service Bill to allow reflection of the views shared on the communication, reflecting that this decision is detailed at Appendix 1 to the report. Prior to this announcement, key stakeholders had withdrawn engagement on the NCS Bill, and COSLA withdrew shared accountability for the bill based on its assessment of a lack of progress in addressing the concerns and risks identified by local government. A summary of the COSLA position is provided at Appendix 2 to the report. Malcolm Bauer will speak to the report, and Emma Maxine is also available online to answer members' questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief, and you'll be relieved to know I'm not going to relate the whole history of the National Care Service Bill, which this Council indicated at its very inception many of the issues that came to haunt it. And those are not about the motivation to improve social care services or the funding of them. There are many good things in the bill, and I'll refer briefly to these in a minute. But the problem with the bill was it focused on power, it focused on governance, it focused on structure, and what it didn't address was the finance, the formidable amount of money that would be required to achieve, I think, the objectives of the bill, nor did it take account of the very workforce issues which we've been discussing today. There are real difficulties in the social work and social care workforce, and we know that ourselves. It is a minor miracle. I've referred to agency staff that we are able to largely fund, resource our own services, both social work and social care, from residents of the Western Isles. It's a really good thing, but it's very fragile, and our other islands council colleagues are not in that position. Shetland, I think, spends over 3 million on agency workers each year. Now, we couldn't afford that, and thankfully, we don't have to do it. So the bill didn't address funding, and it didn't address workforce, and hence it hit all these difficulties. We've not been positive about those elements of the bill, but we have been positive both with COSLA and with government about the motivation for the bill and the need for change in social care. And I think this is a real opportunity, and I ask for your support as a board in the Comhairle doing this, working with government to take the good things of the bill, some very good things on National Social Work Agency, to support what is really a beleaguered profession. Those are my words, not Jack Libby's, but I think he was saying exactly the same thing. On respite care, on support for carers. All of that needs funding, but all of these are good things. So we want to work with government to support these, to support how they can be delivered in the Western Isles, and of course to support how National Care Service aims and objectives and values can be incorporated within the single authority model, which we seek. I've had preliminary discussions with Neil Gray, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and for Health and Social Care, on this very subject. He's very keen to hear from us in that regard, and that's set out in the corporate strategy part of the report. So it's for noting, but there's an awful lot to note. And I think now that the tables have been cleared and we're back to discussion about what a National Care Service Bill could do, not just what it should do, I think there's a real opportunity for progress. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, and Mrs. McSween may have comment.
Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask Mr. Burr, if what he's proposing there is to work alongside the Scottish Government in certain parts of the bill which are good? Is COSLA in the same opinion?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, Chair. We have worked very closely with COSLA in making sure that COSLA is supportive of that approach. And that, of course, part of that is saying that what will work elsewhere will not necessarily work here. There is no appetite for single authorities in the cities, and nor should there be, because it's a wholly different environment. But there is here, and there are some really good things in the bill that I hope are not lost sight of, but they need to be incorporated within the whole agenda of public service reform. And that's what COSLA is supportive of. So COSLA is supportive of that dialogue, but that recognising it will be different in different areas.
Thank you, Callum. Is there any other questions for Malcolm online? No? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chief Executive. Do members agree to note the report? Great. Okay. Well, I think that's the end of. Thank you very much.